All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My apologies, I know it's late. We'll try and make this as short, as painless as possible so we can all go home. My name is Enrique Garcia, and with my friend and colleague Idriss Sisaid, we're going to present our project called O-Moon, which is to build a modular solar generator for lunar applications to create a lunar infrastructure as soon as possible. We presented this at IAC a couple of months ago in Mexico, and now we'd like to discuss this with you as well. So after a quick introduction, we'll talk about our startup, OSOL, which is the one leading this project. We'll then talk about the lunar part of our project. We'll talk about some of the key advantages that our solution can bring, as well as some of the challenges that we're facing at the moment in developing this project. We'll talk about the next steps and some of the opportunities that we have for collaboration and work as part of our project. And finally, we'll talk as a sort of conclusion about the applications and the future of this project. So, Idriss?
So quickly, before we get into the heart of the matter, just to give a quick introduction of our startup, and then give you a small history of where it started, what we did. So in 2014, we participated in a competition organized by the French space agency CNES. And the idea was to try to find applications on Earth using technology from space. That was the theme of the competition. So we went with Enrique and we started working on a project that use solar panels, like the systems that deploy the solar panels on spacecraft, but use that on Earth for generators. So we won that competition, and all of a sudden we became entrepreneurs. We had to develop a generator that literally can deploy solar panels and then use it for basic purposes, like to produce electricity. And then when you're done, you just fold up everything and move to a remote location. So one of the main applications for these generators, as you can see on the picture, is for NGOs. So when you are on a remote location, there is an earthquake or disaster, you need electricity, and 90% of the electricity used today in these situations are using diesel generator, and the solar technology is not yet mobile. So the main purpose of our startup is to make solar energy more mobile and more simple to use. Then comes to the next step, which is more interesting for us today, which is how to apply this to space again. So it is a spin-off, so we take the technology from space, bring it down to Earth, and now we're trying to send it again to space. So quickly, because we're running late, why are we doing this? Why are we proposing this O-Moon project? We have seen recently an increased interest in exploration, in space exploration. One amongst them, you've heard of Shaman Village. So this concept proposed last year by ESA's director, John Warner, to propose to all governments and private sector to bring their technologies to participate in exploring the moon. So the idea is to make a big village where everyone could go and create, have not the bread maker, but really technologies, and try to make a concept around it. The next US administration is expected to return to the moon. Despite all these big steps towards Mars, I think we will have to go to the moon first. And the problem in all these missions is that power is a big factor. So as you can see, it's roughly 20 to 30% of any mission goes to the power subsystem. So it is a burden, it is really a problem that we're trying to solve with our solution by decreasing this cost and enabling more with less.
So what is it that we actually do? We've talked about what the stage is. Now we're going to try and explain what our solution actually is. So as Idriss mentioned, we try and deploy solar cells. So we basically took the solar panels from satellites, which deploy after they leave the fairing of a rocket, and modified the system so that it could withstand gravity. And that is the basis of our terrestrial application. And it has advantages such as the fact that it's easy to use because it can be automatic. You don't need any technicians, anyone who has skills in electronics. All you need to do is just put it where you want it, and automatically it will deploy and produce power. It makes it very mobile, very safe, easy to transport. And when we were working on this project for terrestrial applications, in fact, we would love to show you the prototype, but it's only half complete. Maybe in a couple of months, if you happen to come to Nice, you'll be able to see it. But the idea is that when we were working on this, we realized actually this mobility, the fact that it's automatic, could be used on the moon as well, or on other planetary bodies if we got there soon. So we then proposed to use this on the moon as part of a moon village, as Idriss mentioned. Again, it would provide a lot of advantages, such as the fact that it would create we'll rapidly be able to build this infrastructure. We could interconnect the different generators to produce a smart grid. And because we would produce in excess of power, future missions such as rovers or manned missions to the moon could be able to charge their batteries and use our power instead of needing their own subsystems. This would make them a lot safer and would probably save us a lot of money in the long run.
I think one thing that we didn't mention is in order to successfully transfer this technology from space to Earth, one big difference was gravity. So in space, you can launch spacecraft, you can deploy as many square meters as you want. They won't bend, they won't break because there is no gravity. But on Earth, that was our main problem. And then we had to solve this in order to make it useful for terrestrial applications. So if we want to really quickly go into some technical aspects of our project, we have to talk about the different kinds of cells that exist today, so photovoltaic cells. There are more, but there is like really three main types of cells. So the polycrystalline ones, the monocrystallines, and the thin films, so very flexible and very light. And we have tried to trade off all the technologies that are existing now and try to find the good equilibrium between the mass and the power that we produce. So we won't dwell into these details, but roughly to say that one of the predominant factors in choosing these cells is that the efficiency. And today, we can reach like maximum 35% with the really, really good cells, but hopefully it will keep on going up, and then at some point we will have really light and efficient cells. In the key technology, I think this is, for us, one of the most important slides, because you guys are involved in it. There are many, many key challenges that we have to solve in order to make this happen, and in order to really propose that to ESA, if they're keeping on working on Moon Village. So if at some point you're interested, and you can orient your questions toward this slide if you want. One problem is storage. You can produce electricity, but then at night, you need to still have a consumption, and then you need to store the electricity somewhere. So we have to consider which kind of batteries you use, and also we have to consider the lifespan of our technology, because the more you use them, then the less power you will get, let's say in 20 years or in 15 years. So we have to make sure that all the technologies we use have a good lifespan, and they are obviously light and all the things that I said before. We have to cope with the night periods. So if we're on the moon, you know that there is a big gradient of temperatures between night and day. So that's something we have to consider. We also need to consider the locations where we put our network of generators, because it's not going to be one, but it's going to be much more. Another problem is lunar dust. You're on the moon, you've got lunar dust, and it's, I think, one of the most important problems that we face in this project. Is how to make sure that we clean these solar panels. On Earth, it's very simple. When we deploy our system, it's going to automatically clean the dust. But in space, the dust is more sticky, and it can scrap the photovoltaic cell. So it's really a problem. And another quite fun problem to work on is the procedure to interconnect our generators. So you're going to land, let's say, 100 of these generators on the moon. Then you need to really make them autonomously connect together so that you have this network of solar panels, so that you have more power to use. And obviously, you can do this with an astronaut, but it would be better if it is done automatically. So we are working on these challenges right now. We're trying to propose the second version to the next IAC in Australia. So if you're interested in one of these tasks, or you're really interested in working, for instance, on a thesis on these things, we can really cooperate together and try to really work on that together.
So our next steps. We have proposed a conceptual study. We've identified some of the challenges. What you saw earlier wasn't an exhaustive list, and there are lots of things that we haven't thought about. So part of why we're here as well is to try and get your input on what you think our problems are and what we should be dealing with. So feel free to, at the end when we have questions, or come and approach us just to tell us these are challenges that we feel you will face as well and that you should look into. But equally, we are working on these challenges from a conceptual point of view, from the design point of view, with universities such as Cranfield, a couple of universities in France, and we would like to propose this to any of you who might be interested in helping us out, maybe as part of your degrees, such as a master thesis or something like that. So that's something that we could discuss. We are completing the prototyping of our generator, like I mentioned. They should be ready by the end of the year. And Idriss here will be going to a Martian simulation, MDRS, in the desert of Utah in the States in January of next year. So that will be our first test of our generator in what could be a future application on Mars or the Moon, a similar kind of environment. We will then carry on with a conceptual study, trying to propose an architecture, and crucially, we'll also try and perform an economic assessment to see whether this project would actually make sense from a financial point of view. So as you can see, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we're very excited, and hopefully we'll be able to carry on with this and present this at the next IAC. And finally, before we leave you alone, in the very far future, what we're trying to propose is this infrastructure that would provide a number of different benefits, such as primarily the fact that we produce power for all these missions that are increasingly demanding in electricity. It would allow things like human exploration. It would allow increased robotic exploration in the first place. It would allow in situ resource utilization, and it would pave the way for future colonization of the Moon, Mars, and beyond. So, thank you very much, and I think we probably have time for a couple of questions if you like.
Thank you. Could you go 3 or 4 slides before you show like the main slide that you had? No, the one after. Yeah, this one. Yeah, this one. You highlighted the problem with the battery, the night period, and the location, right? You could mitigate all these problems if you actually place this in the lunar south pole. Because in the lunar south pole, you have near full-time illumination, so your thermal environment is gone, which is much lesser, so there's not a lot of temperature change. Since it's always illuminated, your battery storage capacity do not have to be much bigger, so you can use that. Since location and configuration, because ESA's planned lunar village is supposedly on the lunar south pole, so if you put your stuff there, you solve many problems there.
So that's a very good point. Thank you for that. We considered that. Like you said, it's not possible to get a perfect sort of illumination throughout. There will always be a short eclipse, and we have to take that into account. But because we are not proposing the architecture for the Moon Village, we have to take into account all possible scenarios. So we'll have to have a number of case studies depending on where they decide to place this. So we are only a building block as part of that bigger plan. So part of our study is, ideally it would be in the lunar south pole, because that would be the easiest. It would make our job easiest, but we also have to take into account the possibility that they might put it somewhere else, and then we'll have to propose a solution for that as well. But thank you very much for your point. That was really good.
We're not the ones selecting the place. It's our potential clients, which would need electricity, and we need to be where they want to be.
Anyone else?
Thinking a little beyond and connecting to our previous session grid on Mars, I know the project is in its baby steps, just starting, but have you thought of O Mars ahead of O Sol and O Moon?
Yes, we have, and we think about it all the time. So like I mentioned, Idriss is going to test it in MDRS, which is effectively a Martian simulation, not a lunar simulation. During your presentation, we were actually thinking about maybe trying to put that in Poland as well for their future simulations. So yeah, it's definitely part of our plan. We would like the system to go to Mars eventually. It's just a matter of how we get there. Any more questions? Otherwise, feel free to contact us anytime. Yeah.
Yep.
So those are email addresses. You can also grab us anytime this evening or tomorrow. We'll be around, and we'd be more than happy to discuss with you. Thank you very much.